Nice launch trajectory and countdown net. Pad is clear.
10, 9, 8.
Launch auto sequence has started.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Go for launch.
Vehicle is supersonic. Stage separation confirmed. Dragon, separation confirmed. Stage 1 is transonic. Landing legs have deployed. And Falcon 9 has landed.
Hello everyone, you're looking at a live view of Falcon 9 awaiting its 12:30 a.m. Eastern Time launch from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, Florida. Welcome to our live launch coverage of the IS-40e and Tempo mission for our customer Intelsat. Today's launch marks our 222nd overall SpaceX mission to date and our 23rd launch this year. My name is Kate Tice, Quality Systems Engineering Manager here at SpaceX, and I'm joining you today from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. We have a pretty unique payload on board the second stage tonight. IS-40e is a geosynchronous communication satellite that will provide coverage over North America for Intelsat's commercial aviation, mobility, and network service customers. Attached to IS-40e is NASA's Tropospheric Emissions Monitoring Pollution, or TEMPO, instrument. Operated by Intelsat, TEMPO is a partnership between NASA and the Smithsonian Institution's Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory and will improve life on Earth by revolutionizing the way scientists observe air quality. It will also be the first space-based instrument to monitor and track air pollution across North America on an hourly basis and report observations during the day. The satellite is scheduled to enter into service next month, and TEMPO will start operations this summer. Here's a little more on Intelsat and today's payload.
Intelsat is bridging the digital divide by operating one of the world's largest satellite fleet and connectivity infrastructures, enabling people and their tools to speak over oceans, see across continents, and listen through the skies to communicate, cooperate, and coexist. With a history of firsts in telecommunications, Intelsat team members are addressing a new generation of challenges.
IS-40e is the latest addition to our fleet of 56 geostationary satellites. They will be operated at 91 West, so over North America. Its primary mission is managed mobility services over North America.
Intelsat IS-40e satellite will provide focused coverage for many of Intelsat's business units. The E stands for EPIC, a high-throughput satellite connecting customers in the air, on the ground, and at sea.
It means in-flight connectivity for commercial airline passengers, connectivity for people on business jets, connectivity for maritime users like people on cruise ships, as well as mobility for disaster recovery.
In addition to serving Intelsat customers, IS-40e will host a NASA and Smithsonian payload called TEMPO. Intelsat will operate the instrument while it monitors and tracks air pollution across North America on an hourly basis, with the ability to stay over a region of interest during a natural disaster, like a major fire or volcanic eruption.
This is going to be the first time that we have an instrument providing air quality measurement from the geostationary orbit. It will allow to better understand the dynamics of air quality over the large cities.
Intelsat's role is basically to provide the ground systems which enables the Smithsonian to send commands to the satellite and obtain measured data. This measured data then is stored in our riverside systems that will be accessed by the Smithsonian for analysis and provide to NASA.
Hi everyone, I'm Ronnie Foreman and I'm a commercial sales manager here at SpaceX. I'm excited to join you and Kate to cover the IS-40e mission tonight. With liftoff just about 7 minutes from now, I want to talk to you first a little bit more about the rocket supporting tonight's launch. Our Falcon 9 vehicle that you see on the pad is a two-stage rocket designed and manufactured by SpaceX. Standing 229 feet tall, the Falcon 9 is about 40 feet taller than the Leaning Tower of Pisa in Italy. And for all you Star Wars fans out there, Falcon 9 was named after the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars. The number 9 indicates the number of Merlin 1D engines on the first stage, which make up the bottom two-thirds of the vehicle. Speaking of the first stage, its objective is to accelerate the vehicle through the Earth's atmosphere to space, and then separate from the rest of the rocket. This first stage, also referred to as the booster, is flying for the fourth time.
RP1 load complete.
There you hear the call out that we've completed RP1 loading into the booster, which again is flying for the fourth time today. It previously supported CRS-26, OneWeb Launch 16, and a past Starlink mission. We will attempt to recover this booster again on our drone ship, a shortfall of Gravitas, which is currently positioned in the Atlantic Ocean, and you can see it on your screen now. If successful, that will mark our 184th landing of an orbital-class rocket, including both Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy side boosters. Moving on up, above the first stage is the second stage, which has a single Merlin vacuum, or MVAC engine, that ignites after stage separation. The second stage is what will carry the Intelsat 40e and NASA Smithsonian Tempo payload to orbit. Speaking of the payload, it's currently safely tucked inside the 17-foot diameter payload fairing that you see on your screen now. It's a large barrel structure with a pointed nose at the very top of the rocket. Made of carbon composite material, the fairing protects the payload from aerothermal heating and contamination on its trip to space, before being jettisoned approximately 3 minutes into flight. Much like the first stage, the fairing halves on today's flight are flight-proven. One half is flying for the second time and the other for its eighth.
Tanks present for strong back retract.
There you hear the call out that we're getting ready for strong back retract. After separation, those fairing halves will return to Earth to be recovered by our recovery vessel, Doug. And the large trussed structure that you see next to Falcon 9 is what we were just talking about on the nets. That's the Transporter Erector, or TE for short. We use it to roll the rocket out to the pad and raise it to its vertical launch position ahead of takeoff.
Strong back lower started.
The call out there says that we're beginning to pull the TE away from the vehicle. The TE also routes the vehicle's fluids, power, and telemetry umbilicals from the ground systems to the rocket and satellites until Falcon 9 transfers to internal power and clears the pad. There you can see the clamp arms are opening up beneath the fairing in preparation for full TE retraction.
And as Ronnie mentioned, those clamp arms are now open, and we should hear the call out momentarily that the strong back is reclining. Actually, I think we can see it there on screen now. At T0, the ground hydraulic systems will pull the TE even further away from the Falcon 9 as it lifts off. At this point in the countdown, both the first and second stages are nearly fully loaded with 1 million pounds of liquid oxygen and kerosene fuel. We use two propellants, a refined form of kerosene.
Stage 1, lock flow complete.
There we heard that call out. Stage 1 is now fully loaded with all of its liquid oxygen and fuel. Stage 2 is undergoing its LOX load. Full fuel load is complete on Stage 2. We expect LOX loading to wrap up at T-2 minutes. The liquid oxygen is chilled well below its boiling point so that it has a much greater amount of mass per volume, allowing us to load more of it into the rocket. In addition to these two propellants, we also use a chemical TTEB, or triethyl aluminum and triethyl borane, and we use that as our ignition source. The combustion of RP1 and LOX is what makes the rocket go, and it's the TTEB that sets the match to that propellant mix. So once again, the first stage has all of its propellants on board, fully loaded with all of its liquid oxygen and RP1. That RP1 load is complete on the second stage, and we're expecting the LOX load to wrap up here any second now on the second stage. At T-60 seconds, we'll hear the call out. The Falcon 9 is in startup. It's an indication that the onboard internal flight computers have taken over the launch countdown. And just inside T minus 2 seconds, we light the Merlin 1D engines for liftoff.
Stage 2, lock flow complete.
And there's that call out. So as of now, Falcon 9 is fully loaded with all of its propellants. The IS-40e and Tempo payload continues to be healthy, and the Falcon 9 team is tracking no major issues on the rocket. Currently, weather is green.
Gas closeout.
Weather is green, and the range is ready to support a T0 of 12:30 a.m. Eastern Time, just 1 minute and 20 seconds from now. We heard that call a little bit ago for the ground closeouts. We'll now see some more of that liquid oxygen venting from the TE as those lines are now closed out to the vehicle.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
All right, there's that call out letting us know that the onboard flight computers have taken control of the launch countdown.
LD, go for launch.
And there's our final go for launch tonight coming from our launch director. We're now at T minus 35 seconds. All systems are go for launch of Falcon 9 with the Intelsat 40e and NASA
30 seconds.
And the NASA Smithsonian Tempo payload. Let's listen in to the terminal count.
$15 seconds. T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition, engines full power, and lift off with Intelsat 40e. Go Intelsat, go Falcon.
Vehicle is pitching downrange.
M1D chamber pressure nominal.
If you're just joining us, those gorgeous views on your screen mean that Falcon 9 has successfully lifted off from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. During
Nominal power and telemetry.
The call out there that nominal power and telemetry for the vehicle. During this phase, which is called ascent, we tilt the engines. The technical term for this is called gimbaling, and that turns the rocket horizontally in what we call a gravity turn.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
There's the call out that Falcon 9 is now traveling faster than the speed of sound. During this period, we're still going up, but we're also heading horizontally away from the launch pad.
Max Q.
Just moments ago, we throttled down in preparation for max Q, which is the period of maximum aerodynamic pressure that the vehicle will see on ascent. So that's what's happening right now. The rocket typically needs to go about 17,500 miles per hour horizontally in order to avoid being pulled back to Earth and reach orbit. Now we're going to have 3 events coming up in quick succession, starting with main engine cutoff, stage separation, and second engine start 1. Main engine cutoff, or MECO, is the point during the flight where we shut down the 9 Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. Shortly after that, stages 1 and 2 will separate from each other so that the second stage isn't carrying unnecessary mass to orbit. And of course, the first stage booster begins its trip back to Earth. The last call out you heard was about the MVAC engine. That's what we're going to start up during SES-1, or second engine start 1. That's the period during the flight where we'll ignite the Merlin vacuum engine on board the second stage for the first time. So we'll see all 3 of those happen back to back just about 10 seconds from now.
MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
So there you heard and definitely saw those great views on your screen. 3 events happening back to back: main engine cutoff, stage separation, and SES-1. Coming up next will be fairing separation in just a couple of seconds. During this portion of the flight, we'll jettison both fairing halves and then attempt to retrieve them again today.
Both vehicles are following nominal trajectories. Fairing separation confirmed.
There we've got confirmation of fairing separation, which means both fairing halves are on their way back to Earth to be recovered by our recovery vessel, Doug. Coming up next, there are 2 burns for our first stage as we prepare for landing on our drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas.
Acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
We're now T plus 3 minutes and 54 seconds into today's mission. And we're currently, as you see there on your screen, we're in the first of 2 planned MVAC burns that will occur prior to satellite deployment. At T plus 6 minutes and 31 seconds, or around there, you should see on your screen the first stage's entry burn. For that entry burn, we relight 3 M1D engines, which are those 9 engines at the base or the bottom of the first stage. We will relight first the center engine, or called E9, and then shortly thereafter, we will also relight 2 radial engines, engines 1 and 5. And all 3 of those together will help slow the vehicle down as it passes back into the Earth's atmosphere. We perform that reentry burn in order to slow down the booster, which helps to reduce those reentry forces that it sees, and in turn, that helps us recover and reuse our first stages.
Both vehicles continue to follow nominal trajectories.
Although we can't see the first stage right now, you can follow along with the telemetry there in the bottom left-hand corner for stage 1, and then that stage 2 telemetry there in the right-hand bottom corner of your screen. We can see that the first stage is now beginning its descent back to Earth, so it has already passed through its apogee, making its way back down. This time we're targeting a landing on our drone ship, which is parked a couple hundred miles off the coast of Florida in the Atlantic Ocean. Now, during that entry burn, Falcon 9 is decelerating by firing its Merlin engines, but it's still moving very rapidly. This causes the vehicle to fly through Merlin's exhaust gases, also known as the rocket's plume, and by doing so, we get a deposit of soot on the vehicle surface. That soot then basically comes from the carbon-based fuel that Falcon 9 uses. We're expecting that entry burn to begin in about 20 seconds. Everything continues to look good there. For that second stage, we can see that MVAC engine, which is the singular Merlin engine designed for use in the vacuum of space, attached there to our second stage.
Stage 1, entry burn, startup.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
All right, so there on that left-hand side of your screen, those stage 1 views are back. We can see that entry burn has begun, and it's also illuminating the grid fins, which help to steer the booster for re-entry and also to make a precise landing.
Stage 1, entry burn, shut down.
All right, we can see that entry burn has concluded.
Both vehicles continue to follow nominal trajectories.
As a reminder, the first stage that we saw there on the left-hand side of your screen, that performed the entry burn for the 4th time. It previously supported CRS-26, OneWeb Launch 16, and a Starlink mission. Falcon 9 is the world's first orbital-class reusable rocket, and this is important because reusability allows SpaceX to refly the most expensive parts of the rocket, which in turn drives down the cost of space access.
Terminal guidance.
The next major milestone we have coming up is SECO, or Second Engine Cutoff 1, which is coming up in about 20 seconds. That will be followed very quickly.
Stage 1, transonic.
And that call out tells us that the first stage is traveling near the speed of sound. That first stage will begin its landing burn just after we have the second engine cut off.
MVAC shutdown.
All right, there's that call out telling us that we had successful shutdown or cutoff of that.
Stage 1 landing burn.
You can see landing burn has begun there on that screen.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
You can see those grid fins working hard to steer it back to the drone ship for its landing.
Nominal orbit insertion.
Great call out there indicating we've got
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
There you can see on your screen an amazing view as always. That landing marks SpaceX's 184th recovery of an orbital class rocket, including first stage landings for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. The mission isn't over just yet. We did hear the call out telling us that the second stage achieved good orbit, so it is now embarking on its first coast phase. After this coast phase, we will light that MVAC engine for a second time, and that will happen around the T+26 minute mark. So hang tight. We'll see you back here in about 15 minutes.